Welcome to Quick Recaps, where we explore the world of film, TV, and all things cinematic. I'm Jake, and today we're delving into the mesmerizing TV series, Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Guillermo del Toro, the visionary filmmaker, takes us on an enchanting journey through 8 standalone episodes, each a tale of supernatural wonder. From twisted fairy tales to gothic horror, his unique style is on full display. To kick things off, we're jumping into episode 1, titled Lot 36. Let's not waste any time and get right into it. In the year 1991, a small, forgotten storage room lot nestled in the heart of a quiet town was about to become the stage for an unexpected tale of darkness and redemption. Nick, a grizzled veteran with right-wing leanings, had recently purchased the rights to the long-abandoned storage lot. He was a man hardened by life and harbored a deep-seated xenophobia that clouded his judgment. It wasn't long before he discovered that the lot he had acquired held more than just dusty old trinkets. One fateful day, Amelia, a Mexican immigrant with a story woven from hardship and hope, approached Nick with tears in her eyes. She begged him to allow her to recover her family's precious belongings from her lot. It had been mistakenly sold to Nick, and Amelia's desperation was palpable. But Nick, blinded by his own biases, heartlessly turned her away. Desperate for funds and searching for anything of value, Nick delved into the forgotten storage spaces. Among the forgotten items, he stumbled upon an Austrian seance table and 3 ominous volumes on demon summoning. Curiosity piqued, he decided to see if there was a potential buyer for these eerie findings. Little did he know, this decision would lead to a chilling and irreversible transformation of his life. A broker introduced Nick to a potential buyer named Roland, a man shrouded in mystery and urgency. Roland expressed a burning desire to obtain a rare 4th volume on demon summoning, believing it would complete a dark and forbidden collection. With the allure of a hefty payday, Nick and Roland set out to search the storage lot once more. As they scoured the dark and forgotten corners of the lot, fate had a sinister surprise in store. Hidden away in a secret chamber, they stumbled upon the elusive 4th volume, but it wasn't the only thing concealed within the chamber's shadows. A dormant demon, a creature of ancient malevolence, had been sealed inside the desiccated body of an old man's long-missing sister. Despite Roland's grave warnings, Nick's avarice got the better of him. Ignoring the consequences, he broke the seal that held the demon captive, all the while reaching for the cursed book. The moment the seal shattered, the demon emerged, a writhing, tentacled mass of malevolence. Roland, who had urged Nick on this perilous journey, was the first to be consumed by the abomination. Terrified and now pursued by the nightmarish entity, Nick ran through the dimly lit warehouse. Panic set in as he desperately sought an escape route, but the exit was locked, and there was no way out. He could only watch as the demon closed in on him. Outside, the forgotten cries of Amelia went unanswered. The woman who had pleaded for Nick's mercy had a choice to make. With a heavy heart, she turned away from the sinister scene unfolding behind the storage lot's doors, leaving Nick to face the terrible consequences of his choices. And as the demon's writhing darkness enveloped him, it marked the end of a tale that began with prejudice and selfishness, closing a chapter that none in the town would ever forget. Up next, we have episode 2, titled Graveyard Rats. Let's get into it. In the midst of interwar Salem, Massachusetts, there existed a man named Mason, a grave robber by trade but driven by desperate need. Life had dealt him a cruel hand, and his futile attempts to gather funds through illicit means had been repeatedly thwarted by an unforeseen terror, a plague of rats. These sinister rodents would rapidly swarm and abscond with any valuables he dared to pilfer from the freshly buried corpses. As his financial situation grew increasingly dire, Mason caught wind of a potential treasure trove hidden in the earth. It was the recently interred remains of an aristocrat, rumored to have been buried with unimaginable wealth. Hope and desperation guided his actions as he set out to unearth the nobleman and his precious belongings. Yet, when Mason arrived at the gravesite under the cover of darkness, he was greeted by a chilling sight. The rats had already done their grim work, burrowing through the soil and clawing their way to the aristocrat's coffin. They had dragged the lifeless body underground, leaving behind nothing but an empty hole in the earth. Driven by an obsession with the riches that were now tantalizingly close, Mason made a fateful decision. He began to crawl into the rat-infested tunnel, deeper and deeper into the unknown. The further he ventured, the more surreal and nightmarish the world became. Suddenly, he found himself face to face with an enormous queen rat, its eyes filled with hunger. The monstrous rodent chased him relentlessly through their subterranean warren, their underground realm filled with the ceaseless scurrying of their kind. With his heart pounding and sweat-soaked, Mason's frantic escape led him to an unexpected discovery. He stumbled into a hidden chamber, a subterranean temple adorned with skeletal remains and glittering treasures. The room held an eerie aura, and it was evident that no living soul had set foot there for centuries. Drawn by an overpowering temptation, Mason seized a jewel-encrusted talisman hanging from the bony fingers of a long-deceased aristocrat. Yet the moment he did, an otherworldly force breathed life into the corpse, and it rose, demanding the return of its stolen possession. Frightened and chased by the vengeful revenant, Mason clawed his way back through the labyrinthine tunnels. In his mad scramble, he inadvertently triggered a catastrophic cave-in. The earth quaked and trembled, sealing the queen rat's fate beneath tons of debris and trapping the corpse within the temple's ruins. Desperate and disoriented, Mason saw a glimmer of light above him, which he believed to be the moon. But to his horror, as he clawed his way towards it, he realized it was the glint of a coffin lid's plaque. He had crawled into a different grave, and now he was trapped inside, buried alive beneath the unforgiving weight of the earth. As darkness closed in around him, the ground seemed to shift and writhe. He was swarmed by the very rats he had tried to evade. Their sharp claws and gnashing teeth brought a nightmarish end to Mason's ill-fated adventure. Days later, a group of fellow grave robbers, lured by tales of Mason's unearthing of the hidden shrine, uncovered his lifeless body within the burial chamber. Adorned with the treasures he had stolen, Mason's corpse told a harrowing tale of his greed. And as if a cruel twist of fate, as they gazed upon his remains, rats emerged from within, a macabre reminder of the horrors that had befallen him in the dark, unforgiving depths below Salem. Now on to episode 3, titled The Autopsy. In the small town of Whispering Pines, 1978 was a year that would forever haunt the memories of its inhabitants. Sheriff Nate Craven, a rugged man with a stern demeanor, found himself facing a bizarre and sinister mystery that would shake the very foundations of reality. One gloomy afternoon, Sheriff Craven received a desperate call for help from a nearby mining operation. A horrific explosion had torn through the mines, claiming the lives of several miners, including one by the name of Joe Allen. The circumstances surrounding the explosion were mysterious, as Allen had been carrying an enigmatic object at the time. Fearing the worst, Sheriff Craven decided to enlist the help of his old friend, Dr. Carl Winters, the town's trusted physician. Dr. Winters, a man of science and reason, was a stark contrast to the sheriff, yet he couldn't refuse a friend in need. Reluctantly, he agreed to perform autopsies on the deceased miners, hoping to shed light on the tragedy that had befallen their community. As Dr. Winters meticulously recorded his findings, he began to unravel a chilling truth. While examining Joe Allen's lifeless body, the unimaginable occurred. Allen's body reanimated, as if possessed by an otherworldly force. It was a moment that defied all scientific explanation, leaving Dr. Winters stunned. The truth, it turned out, was beyond anything he had ever encountered. Within Joe Allen's body resided an alien parasite, a sinister creature that had stumbled upon its host by pure chance. Allen, realizing the impending doom this parasite represented, had tried to rid himself of it, but failed miserably. These parasites were no ordinary invaders. Devoid of sensory organs themselves, they took pleasure in sustenance from their human hosts. They reveled in pushing their hosts' senses to extreme limits, keeping them agonizingly conscious as they devoured them from the inside out. But the alien entity sensed something in Dr. Winters. It detected a weakness within him, cancer. Seizing upon this vulnerability, the parasite subdued the doctor and hatched a grotesque plan. It would parasitize Winters, using his cancer as a never-ending source of nourishment. With a precision that sent shivers down Winters' spine, the parasite cut itself out of Joe Allen's lifeless body. For a brief moment it was senseless, a mere grotesque mass, but then, with malevolent intent, it burrowed its way into Dr. Winters' frail body. In that harrowing moment, a fight for survival like no other unfolded. Dr. Winters, desperate and driven to the brink of madness, reached for Allen's scalpel. In a gruesome act of self-mutilation, he gouged out his own eyes, punctured his eardrums, and in a macabre display, wrote a message on his own chest in blood. Inside their shared twisted consciousness, Dr. Winters confronted the parasite. He had ensnared the creature in his now senseless, dying body. The message on his chest was a grim directive for Sheriff Craven, the last hope for salvation. In a final gruesome act, Dr. Winters slit his own throat. As his lifeblood spilled onto the ground, the parasite's grip on his body weakened, but it was too late. In his last moments, he revealed to the vile entity that it was now trapped within a senseless, dying host. Sheriff Craven, following the chilling instructions, found the recordings of the horrifying conversation between Dr. Winters and the parasite. It was a recording that could shatter the very fabric of their understanding of reality. He knew what he had to do. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Sheriff Craven set Dr. Winters' lifeless body ablaze, reducing it to ashes. It was a grim but necessary act to ensure that the alien parasite, with its insatiable appetite for sensation and life, would never threaten their town again. Whispering Pines would never be the same. The dark secret buried beneath their peaceful community would forever haunt the memories of those who lived through the horrifying events of 1978. Now on to episode 4, titled The Outside. Once upon a time in a bustling city, there lived a woman named Stacy. She was awkward, a misfit in a world where beauty and grace seemed to be the keys to success. Every day, she would glance longingly at the women in her workplace, their confidence and poise radiating like a beacon of hope. Stacy, with her self-doubt and plain appearance, yearned to be accepted and beautiful like them. As the holiday season approached, Stacy received a glimmer of hope. An invitation to her coworker's Christmas party landed in her mailbox. Excitement mingled with anxiety as she pondered what to wear and how to fit in. Her insecurities loomed large as the party drew nearer. On the fateful night of the Christmas party, Stacy found herself amidst her glamorous colleagues. The atmosphere was warm, and laughter filled the air. Her Secret Santa gift, however, was far from a hit. A taxidermy gift, it was met with polite smiles, but it was clear that Stacy's attempts at fitting in had once again faltered. Despondent and defeated, she retreated to the bathroom, where her trembling hands reached for the popular lotion, Aloe Glow, that her Secret Santa had gifted her. She hesitated for a moment before applying it. A few minutes later, her skin began to itch and burn as a rash spread across her face. Her heart sank as she realized that even the seemingly magical lotion couldn't save her. Returning home, she turned to her husband, desperate for reassurance. His words were well-meaning, but they offered little comfort. He told her that she was perfect just the way she was, but Stacy couldn't shake the feeling that her perceived flaws would forever hold her back. That night, something strange happened. As Stacy sat in front of her television, a message from the creator of Aloe Glow appeared on the screen. He urged her to buy more of the lotion, promising it would transform her life. Driven by a desperate longing for acceptance, she agreed. Weeks passed, and Stacy's obsession with the lotion grew. One day, as she attempted to open a new bottle, it burst open, and the liquid oozed out, forming a bizarre humanoid figure. Instead of fear, she embraced it, even planting a kiss on its cheek before it mysteriously dissolved into her bathtub. Her husband, increasingly alarmed by her strange behavior and obsession, confronted her. Stacy, now lost in her newfound fixation, saw him as a threat to her transformation. In a fit of madness, she murdered him, coldly ending their shared history. With her husband gone, Stacy climbed into the lotion-filled bathtub. Using her nails, she scratched off her rashed skin to reveal an entirely new, perfect body underneath. She taxidermied her late husband, cut her hair into a stylish new look, applied makeup to enhance her features, and dressed in the latest fashion. Returning to work, Stacy stunned her coworkers, who were unable to recognize the woman she had become. Her transformation was so astonishing that they couldn't help but invite her to join them, enthralled by her newfound beauty and confidence. Having finally lost herself in the pursuit of beauty and acceptance, Stacy reveled in her coworkers' admiration and her newfound shallow social status. However, deep inside, she knew that she had paid a terrible price for the fleeting attention and beauty she now possessed. The tragic tale of Stacy served as a chilling reminder that the pursuit of perfection can lead one down a dark and treacherous path, one from which there might be no return. Now episode 5, titled Pickman's Model. In the quiet, eerie town of Arkham, the year was 1909, and it was a time when artistic brilliance often danced on the fringes of madness. Will Thurber, an aspiring art student, had recently arrived in the peculiar town, seeking to expand his creative horizons. Little did he know that his life was about to become irrevocably entwined with the enigmatic figure of Richard Pickman. Pickman was the talk of Arkham's artistic circles, known for his bizarre and grotesque works of art that both mesmerized and disturbed those who gazed upon them. Thurber, drawn to the darkness that shrouded Pickman's canvases, found himself irresistibly captivated by the artist's talent and morbid fascination. Years passed, and Will Thurber had evolved from a curious art student into the curator of the town's museum. Yet despite the passage of time, he remained just as enthralled and troubled by Pickman's works, often suffering from horrific dreams inspired by the macabre scenes he had witnessed. One fateful day, Richard Pickman, now a successful and renowned artist, made an unexpected visit to Thurber's home. He was accompanied by his wife, Rebecca, and their young son, James. Thurber was both excited and anxious to host his old friend, whose chilling creations had haunted his thoughts for years. However, things took a sinister turn when young James, unable to resist his curiosity, gazed upon Pickman's works. The boy was immediately struck with terrifying nightmares that seemed to echo the horrifying imagery he had seen. Thurber could no longer remain a passive observer. Confronting Pickman, he demanded an explanation for the nightmares that plagued the innocent child. Pickman, his eyes filled with desperation, begged Thurber to come to his home and see his works in their entirety. There, he claimed, the mysteries would be revealed. As they entered Pickman's dimly lit studio, Thurber was overwhelmed by the sinister aura that enveloped the room. He couldn't help but feel that something deeply unsettling lurked behind those paintings. Fueled by a mixture of fear and fascination, Thurber lit the torch, intending to confront the source of his nightmares. In the flickering light, Thurber's world unraveled. As the flames danced around the grotesque canvases, a terrifying revelation emerged. Pickman's works were not the products of a deranged imagination, but rather a depiction of real-life horrors and harbingers of scenes from the future. Suddenly, a demon, depicted in one of the paintings, broke free from the canvas. With chilling laughter, it reached for Pickman and dragged his helpless body into the very world he had conjured. Thurber, in a state of shock, found himself alone in the smoky room, trembling with a mixture of terror and relief. The next day, Thurber, his mind still reeling from the previous night's horrors, made his way to the museum. To his shock, Pickman's works were on display, completely undamaged, as though the events of the night before had never transpired. Both Rebecca and young James had seen the paintings and were inexplicably unscathed. In a desperate attempt to shield his family from the malevolent influence of these cursed works, Thurber sent his wife and son back home and ordered the paintings destroyed. However, the darkness had already taken hold. Returning to his once peaceful home, Thurber tried to console Rebecca, promising to be a better husband. But what he discovered was far beyond the realm of nightmares. The paintings had driven Rebecca to madness, and she had gouged out her own eyes, believing that blindness would shield her from the horrors within. More horrific still, she had butchered and cooked her own son, mirroring a gruesome scene from one of Pickman's paintings. In a town where the line between art and horror was perilously thin, Will Thurber found himself forever haunted by the inexplicable terrors that had befallen him and his family. In Arkham, where the boundary between reality and nightmare was blurred, the legacy of Richard Pickman's art would forever cast its chilling shadow over those who had glimpsed its grotesque depths. Now on to episode 6, titled Dreams in the Witch House. Once upon a time, in a small forgotten town nestled in the heart of New England, there lived a man named Walter Gilman. But before he became a man, he was a frightened child, haunted by a tragic loss. It all began with the death of his ailing twin sister, Epperly. In the early years of his life, Walter had been a witness to a profound and eerie spectacle. On the night Epperly drew her final breath, a spectral force seemed to seize her frail form. It was as though her very soul was being dragged away, against her will, to a place beyond the realm of the living. Years passed, and Walter grew into a man, his resolve unwavering in his quest to reunite with his sister, to save her from whatever mysterious realm had claimed her. The year was 1933. And Walter was now a member of the Enigmatic Spiritualist Society, a group dedicated to bridging the gap between the living and the spirit world. Desperate and determined, Walter embarked on a peculiar journey. He decided to rent a room in a house with a sinister reputation, for within its walls had dwelled an executed witch named Keziah Mason. It was in this eerie abode that he hoped to uncover the key to reuniting with Epperly. Walter's pursuit of the supernatural was relentless, and he soon stumbled upon a peculiar and ancient indigenous drug known as liquid gold. This mysterious concoction was rumored to have the power to transport one's consciousness to the enigmatic place Walter called the Forest of Lost Souls. It was believed that this forest was the very same realm Epperly had been drawn into. With great trepidation and a heart heavy with hope, Walter imbibed the liquid gold and embarked on a series of daring attempts to cross the boundary that separated the living from the realm of the spirits. He journeyed into the ethereal forest in search of his sister, battling the darkness that lurked in those haunted woods. As the veil between worlds grew thinner, Walter's efforts did not go unnoticed. The spirits of the other side, including the ghostly Keziah Mason and her eerie familiar, a human-faced rat named Jenkins Brown, began to take a keen interest in his endeavors. In an astounding turn of events, Walter succeeded in locating Epperly and brought back a small piece of her dress into the world of the living. The reunion was bittersweet, for it brought with it a dark revelation. In their pursuit of reuniting with their loved ones, Keziah and Jenkins had also returned to the realm of the living. The rules of this twisted supernatural game soon became clear to Walter. For one of them to remain in the living world, he had to die before the break of dawn. The tension in the room grew as Keziah, desperate to secure her place, attempted to end Walter's life. But it was Epperly, bound by a love stronger than death itself, who intervened. In a final act of love and sacrifice, she vanquished Keziah, and in the arms of her brother she found peace. However, Jenkins, the cunning and sinister familiar, saw an opportunity. With a chilling speed, he burrowed into Walter's body, bursting forth in a violent and deadly assault just moments before dawn broke. It was a grim victory, and with a triumphant shriek, Jenkins claimed his prize, burrowing back into Walter's body, possessing him for eternity. In this haunting tale of love, sacrifice, and treacherous forces from beyond, Walter Gilman's quest to reunite with his sister took a dark and tragic turn, leaving him forever altered by the malevolent spirit of Jenkins Brown. Now on to Episode 7, titled The Viewing. In the year 1979, in a sprawling mansion hidden away from the world, lived the enigmatic and wealthy recluse, Lionel Lassiter. Lassiter, who had amassed his fortune through a mysterious series of business ventures, was known to indulge in eccentric and unconventional pursuits. However, it was an invitation extended to a group of intriguing individuals that would plunge them all into an otherworldly experience beyond their wildest dreams. Among those summoned to Lassiter's opulent abode were the acclaimed musician, Randall Roth, the astrophysicist with a passion for extraterrestrial life, Charlotte Shea, the best-selling author, Guy Landon, and an enigmatic psychic named Targ Reinhard. Lassiter's intent was to unite these diverse minds for a unique viewing, one that promised to expand their consciousness beyond the confines of ordinary reality. As the guests gathered, they found themselves flanked by Lassiter's personal physician, the enigmatic Dr. Zara. In an unexpected and rather unsettling turn of events, Lassiter encouraged them all to partake in a peculiar concoction. It was a mixture of cocaine, blended with a custom-made drug created by the mysterious physician herself. The intent was to align their thoughts and place them on the same enigmatic wavelength. Guided by the mesmerizing Lassiter, they embarked on a journey that would lead them to a hidden room, a place unlike any they had ever encountered. At the center of this secret chamber rested an otherworldly meteor, an object of unfathomable power and origin. As the group gathered around the meteor, it began to react to their collective presence. The room seemed to pulsate with an eerie energy, and one by one they fell into a trance, their minds and senses utterly captivated. Suddenly, the meteor cracked open, and an oozing, ethereal entity emerged from its depths. Its presence was overwhelming, and its power was unlike anything they had ever imagined. In an instant, Targ's face melted away, and Dr. Zara's body disintegrated into nothingness. Guy Landon's head exploded in a gruesome display of otherworldly force, leaving the remaining two survivors, Charlotte Shea and Randall Roth, in a state of sheer panic. Shea and Roth, horrified and desperate to escape, fled the room and the mansion, their hearts pounding as they raced for their lives. They finally came to a halt, their breathless bodies trembling, and questioned the unfathomable horror they had just witnessed. Meanwhile, the entity, now merged with Lionel Lassiter's body in a grisly fusion, began stalking the darkened grounds of the mansion. Its power was uncontrollable, and it could unleash destruction with a mere thought. It killed Lassiter's guard with a surge of deadly electricity, leaving behind a scene of utter chaos and terror. Shay and Roth, now in a frenzied state of survival, fled further, finally seeking refuge in a nearby car. Their trembling hands gripped the steering wheel, and they sped away from the mansion, desperate to distance themselves from the malevolent entity. As they put miles between themselves and the mansion, they couldn't help but question the true nature of the being they had encountered. Meanwhile, the entity, now a grotesque fusion of Lassiter's form, descended into the dark sewers, its uncontrolled aura disrupting the electricity of the city above, leaving the world above them shrouded in darkness and fear. The mystery and horror of that fateful night would haunt them forever, and they were left to wonder if the entity's reign of terror was far from over. And last but not least, Episode 8, titled The Murmuring. In the quiet, still year of 1951, the Bradley family found solace in the realm of birds. Nancy and Edgar Bradley, both accomplished ornithologists, dedicated their lives to studying the mysterious choreography of bird murmurations. Their world revolved around the intricate patterns of wings and the mesmerizing dances that painted the sky. Yet, in the depths of their shared passion, a shadow had fallen upon them. It was the tragic loss of their daughter, Ava, that had cast its long, heavy pall over their lives. Grief had become their silent companion, a companion that neither of them could bear to face. In the search for respite from their unspoken pain, they decided to escape to a remote country home, nestled far from the troubles of the world. Amid the secluded, peaceful landscape, Nancy's pain took a different form. In the solitude of the countryside, she began to see apparitions, ghostly, ethereal figures. A crying boy, his tears falling like raindrops, and a woman, her mouth twisted into a scream of rage, appeared before her. These spectral visions seemed so vivid, so real, that they left Nancy shaken and bewildered. Edgar, ever the rational scientist, believed these apparitions were born from the immense strain of Nancy's grief. He tried to comfort her, to assure her that these were but phantoms conjured by her wounded heart. But as the days turned into weeks and the visions persisted, doubt and fear crept into Edgar's heart. Then, as if pulled from the pages of a dark novel, the secrets of their country home began to unravel. Nancy unearthed the history of the place they now called home. Claudette, the previous owner, had lived a tormented life. She had drowned her own son, an act of unfathomable cruelty, and then, unable to bear the weight of her sin, had taken her own life. The crying boy and the screaming woman in Nancy's visions were unveiled as the tragic echoes of Claudette's anguish. A terrible tension grew between Nancy and Edgar as the weight of their grief pressed upon them. In a heated argument one night, Edgar's frustration boiled over. He had watched Nancy grieve silently for Ava, unable to shed a single tear, unwilling to discuss their loss. The distance between them had become an insurmountable chasm, and Edgar felt a deep sense of hopelessness about their strained relationship. Despondent and unable to find the right words to heal their wounds, Edgar decided to leave for his research site the next morning, hoping that time and space might bring some clarity to their lives. Alone in the house, Nancy's fragile heart was shattered by the haunting apparitions once more. The screaming woman Claudette chased her through the corridors, and the crying boy wept inconsolably. Filled with compassion, Nancy reached out to the spectral child, comforting him, reassuring him that he need not fear his mother's anger any longer. With a gentle push, she urged him to run into the light. As he did, he vanished into the ether. Nancy watched in awe as Claudette's spirit, now free of its torment, let go of her rage and despair. In a final, heart-wrenching moment, Claudette threw herself from the balcony. Nancy understood that the woman's anguished screams had been cries of torment over her own unforgivable actions. And then, as if a miracle had been performed, the sky outside transformed into an enormous bird murmuration. Countless birds danced in harmony, creating an intricate, mesmerizing display. The beauty and grace of their movements enveloped Nancy like a warm, loving embrace. It was as though nature itself was trying to mend her broken heart. In the midst of this breathtaking spectacle, Nancy finally allowed herself to cry for Ava. The tears flowed like a long-awaited release, cleansing her soul of the pain she had buried deep within. She knew that it was time to confront her grief, to share her feelings with Edgar, and to find a way back to the love they had shared before their world shattered. Edgar returned that evening weary but hopeful, only to find Nancy waiting for him, ready to talk about Ava, to share the pain they both carried. The burden that had pushed them apart was now the bridge that would bring them back together. They held each other, their tears mingling, their hearts connecting once more. As they stood together, surrounded by the whispering secrets of the murmuring birds and the ghosts of the past finding peace, they knew that they had finally found the strength to face the future together, hand in hand. And that concludes another enthralling episode of Quick Recaps. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the mesmerizing world of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. If you've been intrigued by the curiosities we've explored today, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more exciting cinematic journeys. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep your eyes on the screen and your ears tuned to Quick Recaps. Thank you for joining us, and we can't wait to share more cinematic wonders with you in the future.